So good morning. Welcome again to all of you. Hopefully you've been welcomed several times by several people at this point. I'm Michelle Biller-Levy. I'm one of the admissions officers here and a proud Barnard graduate, class of 2008. So I'd be happy to make this a one-woman show and stand up here and tell you about my Barnard experiences, which were obviously positive because I have yet to leave this campus. But instead, I will turn it over to our more current students who are here to share with you, give you a glimpse into their current Barnard experience and tell you a little bit about it. I'm going to have them just go down the row and say their names and where they're from and what they're majoring in and what some of the activities that you're involved in on campus. And then I will start with a question, and then we'll immediately, right after that, open it up to all of you to ask any questions that you have. So start thinking about those now, and you can raise your hands. I just want to make two quick housekeeping announcements, three actually, and I'll make them again at the end. The first is just that you all know the financial aid office has walk-in hours today from 11 to 4, and they're located in the basement of Millbank Hall. So when you leave this building and go to your right and walk no further, that's Millbank. So you can go stop in there anytime. There's also the theater office is going to have open office hours today from 12 to 12:45, and they're also located in Millbank Hall on the 5th floor in room 507. And we're going to have lunch after this, and that's going to be outside because it's a glorious day. But I'll announce this all again at the end in case you forget, because you are so enthralled in what you're hearing from our students. So without further ado, if you don't mind just going down the row and saying your names, where you're from, what you're majoring in, and what kinds of activities you're involved in. We'll start with Amanda.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Thumb, and I'm a current senior at Barnard. I transferred to Barnard in the second semester of my sophomore year, so all in all, I will have spent 2.5 years here, unfortunately, as opposed to 4. I study religion with a concentration in Judaism, although this is probably not what I'm going to pursue after college. And prior to coming to Barnard, I went to Stony Brook University, which is in Long Island, for 1 year, and then in between studied abroad in Israel for 6 months. The things I was looking for that I did not find at Stony Brook, or I won't use names, that I didn't find in another school, were a small campus and a women's college. So those are the primary reasons that I chose Barnard. Moreover, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, so after being in Israel, I was excited to be back in Manhattan, and my sister also went to Barnard, and that was a big motivating factor, admittedly. And then activities. I'm a student admissions representative, hence why I'm here right now. And I also did ROTC for the United States Air Force for a couple years, so if anybody has questions about that, let me know. And held a couple internships here and there.
Hi everyone, my name is Sinead Roban. I'm a senior here at Barnard, studying sociology. That's my major, and my minor is race and ethnic studies. As far as activities go, I've really been involved with student activity planning committees on campus. So I'm a part of MACAC, which stands for the Macintosh Activities Council. Barnard's sort of where all our motto is making Barnard traditions happen. So we plan activities throughout the semester every school year. And I've also been a part of a club called Students to End Modern Slavery, which started across the street at Columbia, but then I helped spearhead the process of merging so that the clubs received Barnard recognition as well as Columbia recognition. So it was a club for both sides of the street. And I was recently named the Barnard co-chair for the Black Heritage Month celebration, which will be taking place next February, but we're in the process of planning everything now.
Hi, my name is Heather Floyd. I'm currently a sophomore at Barnard. I will be declaring an English major in the spring with possible minor in religion. I'm not really sure. I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, northern Kentucky area, so South, Midwest, whatever you want to call it. And during my time at Barnard, I'm heavily involved in a Christian group on campus called Columbia Faith in Action, and I worked this summer as a resident intern for Barnard's pre-college programs.
Hi, I'm Gina. I'm a senior here at Barnard. I'm majoring in anthropology, minoring in English. I am from the greater Philadelphia area, and I'm most heavily involved in the Columbia Daily Spectator, which is our student newspaper here, and I also have tutored with America Reads and a few internships as well. So.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to lead off with one question, and then we'll open it to you, which I think is most relevant to all of you right now in the process of making your decision of where you want to attend college. So if each of you can just quickly, briefly address what made you choose Barnard over any other school that you were looking at? You don't need to name other schools. But what made you choose Barnard? What made you feel like this was the place for you? And we can start in the other direction if that works. So we'll start with Gina.
So when I was in high school and I was a senior, junior, or whatever, I really had no idea what I wanted out of a college, and I was kind of just applying places that I thought might work for me, mostly on the East Coast, just I want to be close to home. So yeah, I really had no idea what I was looking for, and then I just had a conversation with my guidance counselor, and she kind of noticed that some of the schools I was applying for were along the lines of what Barnard had to offer. So she brought up Barnard, and I didn't really know anything about it at the time, unfortunately. But then I went home and did all my research, and I knew I had to apply. I totally, fell in love with it just from like the website. And then after the whole process, I had gotten in, I was still kind of like, there was another school and I didn't know, but then I came here to an open house like this one, and I met some students, I met faculty, and it was absolutely so right for me, so that's how I ended up here.
My story is a little bit different. I didn't really intend to come to Barnard. I didn't think I wanted to go to a women's college. I went to a public high school in Kentucky, so I'll let you figure that out. But I saw an ad in my high school for Barnard's pre-college program. So the summer before my junior year, I actually spent a month here. And I fell in love with the campus. I knew it was something that I would consider, not necessarily at the top of my list, but definitely something to keep an eye on. And I ended up applying sort of last minute to Barnard in the fall of my senior year. I, again, wasn't really planning on a women's college, but it was in the city, and I want to work in public relations communications, so New York seemed like the right place to go. And also I was only applying to schools in the Northeast, so kind of narrowed it down. But what really sealed the deal for me was Barnard's financial aid. It was unbelievable how well they worked with my family. So it sort of came down to, choosing between a couple schools, and Barnard just kind of blew everyone else out of the water as far as how much they were willing to cooperate with my family. So that's it. And everyone here is nice. So.
Hi, so I forgot to mention earlier that I'm from Queens, New York. So at some point I had a really, really, really long list of schools to apply to, and I sat down with my parents, and they just said, Sinead, you need to figure this out in some way. You do not want to go to some of the schools on your list. Let's figure out what you really do want. And at some point I decided to stay in New York. I wanted to be close to my family, but still have an on-campus experience. So I'm from Queens, but I do live on campus, and I have for all 4 years. So once I decided to apply to schools in New York, I still didn't really know much about Barnard. It was on my list because it was a school in New York and it had a good reputation, but I didn't really know much about it. So I started doing my own research and got more and more interested, and when I finally came to an open house, that was it for me. I fell in love. Just being on campus and hearing everyone speak about their experiences at Barnard really, really spoke to me. I wanted a small environment, and the things that Dean Hollabaugh spoke about earlier, like the advising and how you'll have an advisor from essentially before you even graduate from high school. Those things are really important to me because I went to a fairly large public school, and I didn't always feel academically supported in the ways that I wanted to be. So that really drew me to Barnard. And as far as the Barnard being a women's college, I initially sort of applied in spite of it being a women's college, but once I got here and I saw how strong all of the women on campus were, how powerful they were, how confident they were, even though they were only a few years older than me, I really realized that this was a place where I could grow a lot as a person, academically, intellectually, personally, and 4 years later I can really say that all of that has been true. So definitely happy with my choice.
So, like one of my counterparts, I did the Young Women's Leadership Institute, which is a pre-college program. So this was only a week-long program, but I did it in the summer of 2009. And at the time, I was going into my senior year of high school, which is a very large, very public high school in Brooklyn, and it was co-ed. I was put into this outstanding program at Barnard while not ever having had that experience in my high school career. It was just the exact opposite of what I had ever gotten in an academic experience prior. So I spent only 1 week on campus, but even in 2009, a year before I applied, I was absolutely set on Barnard. And as I said, I do have a familial influence, but I can definitely say that the Young Women's Leadership Institute, for anyone in the audience who is not a senior and has time to still apply for next summer, you should do it. And it was my primary reason for being interested in this college.
Thanks for the plug. We don't pay her to say that, I promise.
They don't.
So I love to open it. I have plenty of questions that I can ask, but I'd love to first open it to you and see if you have things that you're wondering about. Anybody want to ask anything to our students in particular? Let's start right in the front here.
For each of you, what do you think set you apart from other applicants when you applied to Barnard?
The question was when they had, if any of them had interviews to Barnard.
I'm sorry. What set you apart from other people, other applicants that you felt you asked?
Okay, so the question is, what, in terms of your application, what do you think set you apart from other applicants to Barnard? Which I guess you can't know the definitive answer to, but
Yeah.
you can try. I guess if I can rephrase the question a little bit, tell me if this works for you. Sort of, what do you think makes up sort of the qualities that make a Barnard student? What are some of the things that you feel that you've embodied as a result of being here and that you see in your peers as Barnard students? Is that okay? Okay.
Do you want to start?
Sure. Okay, so I transferred to Barnard, as I said, and that was immediately after, well, kind of during studying abroad in Israel. I would say that a Barnard woman is someone who loves exploring, even if that doesn't mean physical travel. Not everybody is going to want to study abroad for half a year or a year. A Barnard woman definitely jumps at getting out of her comfort zone and bettering herself. And I think that, I'll say it, I think that that was what I did when I studied abroad, and I think that's what all of us do on a daily basis in our own ways. So that is a good thing.
That's a really tough question now that I think back on what in the world I wrote on my application. I think dedication to your studies as well as extracurricular activities really makes a difference. I know that all of the women that end up coming to Barnard worked really, really hard in the classroom in high school. They were all super involved in lots of clubs and activities. I did mock trial and moot court for 4 years, all 4 years of high school, and I was super involved in that. And I worked on student government. And I don't think it really matters what specific things you do as long as you show that when you're dedicated to something, you put your time into it and you're willing to work really hard at it. Yeah, I think that just show that when you're interested, you work hard.
I'd like to think that my joy and charm just came across on paper. But honestly, I think it's really just showing that there's something that you're passionate about, something that you love. For me, and this is probably not good, I love coffee like more than most people. And I'm pretty sure I wrote about that on my application. And while that seems like something a little trivial, I mean, I was able to communicate in a way that showed just how much I had passion for that. And if I can demonstrate that, then I'm going to be able to demonstrate that passion in other areas during my time at Barnard. And I really think, as cliche as it sounds, being true to who you are and not what you think admissions counselors want to hear. Like, did they want to read an essay about me sitting in a Starbucks for 5 hours? Probably not. But if you can effectively communicate just a little glimpse of who you are. It's hard. I know the Common App is stressful to try to show who you are in just a short space, but just give them a glimpse. Show them why you want to be here.
Yeah, I have a similar, I think, experience with like writing about something kind of unconventional in my essay. And I think I only realized this like recently looking back, but the essay that I wrote is such a good fit for Barnard, and I didn't necessarily get into like all the schools that I had like hoped and dreamed of getting into. I mean, I obviously hoped and dreamed of getting into Barnard, but and looking back, it totally makes sense. Like my essay, I don't think would have appealed to admissions officers at another school like it would here. It's totally makes sense now. So just try to get yourself across in the essay. It doesn't have to be about how much you love like chemistry or how much time you spent like playing the piano or something like that. It can be, but it can also be like about coffee or about, you know, something that's just you, so.
Thank you. I'd agree with all those things as a person who does actually read the applications. Thank you. Yes, in the second row.
Talk about how taking classes at Columbia, how that, how Columbia University fits in with Barnard and your individual, curriculum.
The question was about the relationship between Barnard and Columbia and how each student has individually experienced that relationship in terms of curriculum and otherwise. Maybe.
Okay, I'll start. So, yeah, our academic experiences are very integrated, or can be. It's kind of up to you how you decide to draw that line. But for me, like the way that I choose classes is like I don't really look at what school it's at. I just look at a list of classes that's offered to me, and I choose the ones that I want to take based on, the professor or just like the description of it, or my major or whatever that may be. So I've always ended up, being on both sides of the street for kind of equal amounts of time, and both experiences are equally enriching. I love my Barnard classes, I love my Columbia classes, and it's not really, we don't really make that distinction when you're a student here. It's not like, oh, I'm going over to Columbia for a class. It's just like I'm going to class, and I'm going to Hamilton, which is a building on Columbia's campus, for a class, or I'm going to Millbank for a class. It's really very integrated. There's not really a distinction that we see or talk about every day. I'm sure some people prefer taking classes at Barnard, and I'm sure some people prefer taking classes at Columbia, but for me, that's not something that I think about when I'm choosing classes.
I don't even know, like she said, when I'm picking classes, if they're Barnard or Columbia. You sort of just search what you want to take on the class directory, which is shared between the schools. And while Broadway acts as a sort of physical divide between both sides of campus, I don't really ever say like, oh, I'm going to Barnard's campus or I'm going to Columbia's campus. It's all just campus. And in any given class, I can't tell if the girls in that class are Barnard or if they're Columbia. The classes that are shared are truly shared. I will say that as a first year, you do have certain classes, first year English and first year seminar, that are strictly Barnard classes. And as I mentioned before, I was a little nervous about the all-women's atmosphere, but I loved it. My women's seminar specifically was the best class of my freshman year, and will probably be one of the best classes that I take in my 4 years at Barnard. I mean, they're all awesome, but that one was just particularly enriching. But generally, no, I don't notice the difference. It's very, very difficult to explain until you're here. I didn't even understand it, and I still can't. Obviously, I'm not articulating myself very well as to how it works out. But it's really just one giant community.
As a sociology major, I found that most of the classes for Barnard's sociology department and Columbia's sociology department, they're pretty unified. So I've had a really good mix in my classes of Barnard students, Columbia students. And when we're in the classroom together, it's really not about which undergraduate school you technically belong to. We're all just students. We're sharing a learning community. And so that's been a really enriching experience. I think maybe the biggest benefit of having Columbia is that there are just more classes to choose from, which has been a lot of fun. And for me personally, I just prefer smaller classes, so I choose seminar-style classes where we're sitting around in a circle discussing a reading instead of a lecture when someone's speaking to me for an hour and 15 minutes. I just don't learn very well in that environment. I prefer interaction with my peers. And so most of the classes that I've taken have been on the Barnard side of the street, technically taught by Barnard faculty, but Columbia students have participated in them. So it's really not something that I'm super conscious of. And for some things you kind of need to go. So for example, I study Spanish and Portuguese, and all of the Portuguese professors here are based at Columbia. So I have to cross the street for those classes, but it doesn't feel like that because there are students from all undergraduate schools sitting in the classroom, and like I said before, we're just students together in the class, and it works out well.
Okay, I think we probably will echo the same sentiments. We might take another question. You'll start with it if that's okay. Okay, great. So let's take all the way over there. Yes, that's you. Okay. The question was, what is something that you would change, and what's your favorite thing about Barnard? Now you're on the spot. Okay.
I'll get to something I would change after because I have to think about that while I'm talking. So some things I love about Barnard. Was that the first?
Your favorite thing about Barnard?
My favorite thing about Barnard. Okay. My first logistical favorite thing about Barnard is the tunnel system, which is it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a wonderful tunnel that runs the distance of campus, and if it's raining or snowing, you never have to get wet. So that's my just logistical thing.
They're more hallways than tunnels per se.
Oh yeah, I should specify this is like very nice
sewer system.
Yeah.
Digging our way.
Yeah. Okay. It's carpeted. There are offices.
It's very nice.
It's clean.
Thanks. Just figured we should clarify that.
True. Okay. So that's great. My favorite other thing is the nurturing community. I cannot express enough that on any given day, no matter what I am dealing with that day, there's probably a list of about 150 people who I would be willing to go and talk to about my day. Or not just willing, but would actually want to go talk to. That includes faculty members, students, deans, etc. So that's not something we will find in every college campus or university campus, and that's something that I find daily at Barnard.
Least favorite? Are we coming back?
Least favorite. Okay.
Oh.
Honestly,
Well, you would change it. It might not be your least favorite.
okay, well, honestly, I just don't have anything I would change.
Anybody have something they would change?
It's more New York's fault. It's really expensive. I don't really like that, but I mean, as far as Barnard's, no, I wouldn't really change anything about Barnard. I don't think I would offer to sit up here and tell you everything I love about it if I wanted to change something about it.
I think the reason why it's so tough for us to say whether or not we would change something is because Barnard is so customizable, and that if you do have a small problem, you can go talk to a professor or talk to an administrator and figure it out. It doesn't have to be this grand overhaul that I think of when someone asks what I would like to change. It really can just be a conversation and you initiating a small step with the student government, for example. So it's more so the little things. There's not something huge that I would change because I really do love this place.
I think that kind of what some people might see as a weakness of Barnard is, like, as Dean Halbach was saying, maybe the ambition on campus is so overwhelming that we're intimidating, or we put a lot of pressure on each other and ourselves. But that, for me and for a lot of my friends and people that I have talked to about issues like this, that's not a weakness. That's more of a strength. That's what keeps us here and keeps us going and keeps us Barnard women. That's something that I love about this campus. I love that seeing everyone around me being so incredible and doing such amazing things. That's something that makes me feel like, hey, I'm one of these people. I'm going to do all those things too. And I think without that environment, I don't know if I would be here where I am in my life today. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I could add a short thing to that. The stress culture on campus, I would maybe want to change that a little bit. As I can echo what she says as far as you're driven by the success that you see around you, and I love that. Any day being able to talk to a myriad of girls who are doing things that I want to do, people working for NBC or ABC or CBS, I want to work in television. So, seeing people doing that and doing that as college students, that's incredible to me, and knowing that I have those resources to go to. However, I try to stay pretty stress-free. No, not free. Almost free.
Low stress.
Yeah, low stress. Thank you. So that's something that the stress culture kind of makes it difficult to do. But if you do end up at Barnard, I mean, just don't freak out about it. People are going to be succeeding all around you, and it's easy to sometimes feel that you're maybe lagging a little behind, but you're not. And as a sophomore, I feel that sometimes, and then I'm like, wait, Heather, you're a sophomore. Like, you have time. So just enjoy the time that you have here rather than be, just confused or just overstimulated by everything that's happening. Because while Barnard women are very, intelligent and bright and successful, if you're not quite at that level of achievement yet, don't worry about it because you'll get there.
And I'd just like to add that about the stress culture, there are definitely a lot of resources to help you deal with that on campus, be it formally going to counseling at Furman, our counseling center that caters to Barnard students, or talking to a professor, or going to career development and saying, I'm freaking out about what I'm going to do when I graduate, please help me. There are so many people here everyone here is willing to help you. I can honestly say that. And personally, my biggest way to combat any stress I feel is by talking to my friends. I've met amazing people here, and the best thing about having my best friends be fellow Barnard women is that they completely understand what I'm going through in terms of being in this environment. So I always feel heard when I go speak to them, and I have so many stories about leaving my friend's room at 2 a.m. when I was freaking out about a paper and just being like, okay, I can do this. Life is good. I'm going to turn it in and it'll be okay. And it really will be okay. You just have to take your time and use your resources.
Thanks. We have a lot of questions. Okay, let's go to the back on this side. I'm sorry.
What is the participation in athletics?
Gotcha. The question was about athletics. What are athletics like here in sort of the university-wide setting?
I personally am not an athlete, but I have a lot of friends on both sides of the street who are athletes. Any Barnard student coming in as an athlete, you will participate on Columbia teams. And again, I've talked to several of my friends on the soccer team and the volleyball team, and it's not a distinction of like, oh well, those are Barnard volleyball players. Like, no, you're all Lions. Everyone's cheering for the same team. And if anything, I feel like I love that athletics are shared because that just fosters a better community between the two schools.
And just in case no one knows, we have 16 Division I athletic teams, and Barnard students, as she said, can totally participate in them. There was something else I was going to say, but I forgot.
Okay, we can go back to you. Excellent. What other questions can we take? Let's go right over there.
This question is open for everyone, but specifically for Heather. You said your interest was in communications. So how, pursuing that career at Barnard when it doesn't offer the major, how do you find yourself working that out?
That's a great question.
That's a very good question. So I was a little leery of coming to a school that didn't have a communications specific degree. English has always been what I love, so that's why I'm majoring in it. For me, wanting to work specifically in television and production, the internships that are available to me, I haven't taken any yet as a first semester sophomore, but career development, Barnard's NACE-Link website where we find all of our opportunities are incredible. And it's really the network of people rather than what exactly I'm learning in the classroom. I know that what I'm learning is important because it's shaping me to be a thinker. It's shaping me to be that, intelligent, bright Barnard women that they've been talking about all day. But for me, it's really who I know at the end of my years here rather than what I know. And it's kind of intimidating going into a career where I can't exactly, major in that. But I think that's going to be an aid to that, because looking in communications, they really want someone who's diverse, someone who can speak well. And I'm hoping that at the end of my time here, my Barnard experience will sort of shape this excellent candidate for a career in communications and television. I hope that answers your question. I really don't know.
Yes.
Okay, so this doesn't involve communication specifically because I don't think that that's necessarily what I'm interested in doing. However, I am a senior and I am studying religion with a concentration in Judaism, as I said, but I also said that this is probably not what I intend to pursue post-Barnard, at least academically. So speaking to that, I'm interested in going into management consulting. So management consulting happens to be one of those areas in which, and communications can also fall into this section, of careers or an area that doesn't necessarily require a major that directly correlates to that area. So career development is a place that I visit daily, and I'm literally there 5 days a week. So as a senior or as a second year, whatever your situation is, you can go to career development constantly or often or never. It's totally up to you. If you go there, though, the career counselors and peer career advisors could not possibly be more helpful. And what I mean by that is resume review hours, renting suits for interviews, so those logistical things. And on top of that, Barnard attracts strong employers because we have strong students and strong women. So I interviewed last week for a company that came to me. They came to Barnard to interview me. So that's just an example of us being desirable candidates for jobs.
And you should join The Spectator.
Just a fun fact about communications and career development. They do a lot of events for students to meet employers. So last year, just kind of sort of deciding that television was what I loved, so why not try to work in it? I was able to go to a Careers and Coffee event held at Career Development where a Barnard alum, Nancy Gates, who happens to be, the representative for Patrick Dempsey, Brooke Shields, like all kinds of these crazy people where I'm like, I'm meeting someone who went to Barnard and is dedicating time to come talk to students who are currently in a place where she once was. And that's true of any career, not just communications, but there are people who come in for finance, for business, for medicine, and they all want to help Barnard students. And so to me, that's invaluable to be able to talk to someone who's actually in the industry that I want to go into. So definitely check out Careers and Coffee. They have coffee, so of course I'm there.
After we read her application, we got coffee on campus just to make sure that you were covered. Who else has a question that we can help with? Let's go over there in the red scarf. Yeah.
Can you take electives outside of your major? Like if you're majoring in medicine or whatever, can you take dance as an elective?
Great question. The question was if you can take electives outside of your major, will you have time to be able to fill all your major requirements and then also take elective classes?
Short answer, absolutely. The great thing about the 9 ways of knowing is that it really gives you a chance to explore. So you could be pre-med. I have a lot of friends who are pre-med, but also major in anthropology or Africana studies or something like that. And it takes a little bit more planning when you have specific requirements that medical schools are looking for, but it's definitely doable. And so like what I was saying about the 9 ways of knowing is that since you have to fulfill these classes in these areas, not specific classes, just these areas of study, it really gives you a chance to look at a list of sometimes hundreds of classes and pick one out that technically counts towards the requirements of your Barnard degree. And then outside of that, sometimes you still have time to just take random classes. So like I mentioned before, I've fulfilled a language requirement I think 3 times now. I just like taking language classes, so I'm gonna keep doing it until I graduate. It's not going towards my major or my minor, but it's going towards a skill set that I really value, seeking fluency in foreign languages. So that's just one example. I have friends who take tons of dance classes because it's a form of therapy to them and it helps them de-stress. And I have friends who, I think everyone on the panel has stories of friends who are majoring in one thing and constantly takes classes in something completely different, and it works fine with their schedules.
And also, this is more statistical kind of, but by the end of a Barnard student's career, typically about 1/3 of her classes will have been her major requirements. About another third will have been electives And then the third will have been the 9 ways of knowing requirements. So that doesn't have to be the way it pans out, that just tends to be the way we see it panning out, given that's also if you have 1 major as opposed to 2. But there is plenty of room for elective.
Thank you. Let's go to, you've been raising your hand for a while. Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about like housing?
Yes.
What's that like?
Talk a little bit about housing and what housing is like. So maybe we can have sort of one person give us an overview of some of the housing options.
I have an interesting story about housing. So my housing experience was interesting. As a first year, you live in the quad. So you'll be in Salzburger or Salz-Reed, kind of like a slash between the two, or Brooks. And I lived in Brooks, which in my completely biased opinion is the prettiest of all of the buildings. However, we have a lot of people who want to come to Barnard and live here, and New York is strapped for space. So I lived in a rather small room my first year. I was completely freaked out by that. I'm an only child, so having to share a small space with a roommate, I liked her. I had lunch with her yesterday. But, it was a big adjustment to switch to this sort of smaller space. That being said, I loved the quad and being able to live with all of my peers. I met my current roommate, who happened to live on my floor, who I had classes with. It was very random. But it's a great community to start out at Barnard. Living in a space with everyone who's kind of going through the same thing that you are is an interesting experience, and it's fun. That being said, this year I live off campus. I live in the 600s on 116th Street, sort of above Ollie's Chinese restaurant, if you walk by there. And I love that. I live in a suite with 6 other girls. I don't know all of them, but my suite is huge, and I love it. It's probably the nicest housing I will ever have if I live in New York City. And Barnard really does work. They work really hard to make sure that you're happy in where you're living. When I was stressed out about that smaller space, I had people from housing checking in on me saying, hey, how's it going? Like, are you adjusting well? Is everything working out? How's your roommate? And you have a lot of options after your first year to where you could live. We have students down on 110th Street. We have students in Elliott, sort of behind us on Claremont. They're really all over the place. But I think the great thing about Barnard is providing that 4 years of housing. Because being in New York City, and I know I have a lot of friends at home who are getting apartments and living in houses off campus, and that just sounds like a lot of stress to me to try to figure that out. And Barnard, they work really hard to make sure that you're comfortable. And I'm definitely comfortable this year, so I'm doing a good job.
And housing is guaranteed all 4 years. And we have a vastly residential campus. The vast majority of our students do live on campus for all 4 years of their time here at Barnard. What else can we help with? Yes, over there in the striped shirt. You. Mm-hmm.
So far during your time here, what has been your most unique and fulfilling experience, and how have you personally
Yeah, Amanda, it's all yours.
Okay, I love this question. I actually have a
Can you
list.
repeat the question?
Oh, okay, sure. The question was, what was your favorite experience at Barnard, and how have you changed as a person because of it? Right? Okay. So I say this jokingly. I have a list in my iPhone. It's in my notes section of my top 5 Barnard moments because I literally had to remember them because they were that. I'm not kidding. You could look at my phone. So my top Barnard moment is this. I'll give a little bit of a story. Sorry, I love it. So we got a notification last year that Professor and Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel was coming to campus to give a lecture. And my grandparents happened to be Holocaust survivors, and I was a big fan of Elie Wiesel's writing. So I was very excited, and I had already emailed my professor to say that I had to leave her class early so that I could make this lecture. And I called my parents, and I was really excited. And then 2 days later, it was the day before the lecture, and I got an email from I think it was Dean Hinkson, one of our deans here. And she said, hi, congratulations, you've been chosen to meet with Professor Elie Wiesel prior to his lecture. And I was like, so I had a couple questions at first, which was how did this happen and who, helped this happen. So make a long story short, I got some questions answered, and it turned out that my academic advisor, Professor Castelli, who's a wonderful woman, she had nominated me to meet with Professor Elie Wiesel. So flash forward to the next day, and I was sitting at a round table discussion with only 14 other students and Professor Elie Wiesel at the head of the table, and for an hour we just talked with him and asked whatever we wanted to ask, shook hands, took pictures, and then we got front row access right over there to his lecture. I changed as a person because I realized that Barnard thought that I was really valuable.
Oh, that was so good.
That was beautiful. Anybody want to try to top that, ladies? You good?
Yeah.
Should we take the next question?
Yeah, that one.
I can't follow that.
Who knew you had that up your sleeve? My goodness. Okay, who else can we help? Can we answer questions for? Yes, in the back.
So I'm interested in English, political science, psychology, but I know that those are the most common majors at Barnard. Do you feel that anyone who pursues those are kind of drowned because so many students are pursuing these majors as well?
Great question. So if you're interested in something that is a fairly highly populated major here at Barnard, a popular major, do you feel like you won't get access to being able to take advantage of it as much as you might something else?
I think English might be the most or second most
Yeah.
popular. Is it second?
I think it's first.
It's
usually.
first. Okay, it's first. And English is kind of a general, area of learning. And I have a lot of people at home who are like, okay, so you're going to Barnard, Columbia, and you're majoring in English. What are you going to do with that? And my answer is always, I don't know. I mean, I'll figure it out. But no, I think being one of many studying, that's kind of why another reason I had Barnard even on my list at all is their English department is so strong. And while a lot of students study English, I do not feel like one of the many at all. My advisor currently is an English professor, Margaret Vandenberg. I love her. She's so chill and she keeps me zen and it's awesome. But everyone is so helpful. And I mean, Barnard is not that large. So while you have a lot of people studying English, a lot of people studying psych, you still have a lot of resources to help you figure that out. So I don't feel like I'm just one of, hundreds of English majors at Barnard, because also my English major is going to look different at the end than another English major. So I might be taking classes in creative writing or film, something focused towards television, whereas you might have someone else who's an English major who wants to be a novelist. So you have all of these different, sort of venues that you can go within the English major, and I'm sure that's true of psych. Mainly just the amount of people within each department who are willing to help you, and they make you feel like that individual English student, not just, another one of the major. So I hope that makes sense.
Also, just logistically in terms of getting into classes, if you're a major, so seniority works. Seniors get preference in classes, then juniors, then sophomores, then first years. And if you're a major, then you definitely get preference. So, and I say this as someone who has been able to get into difficult classes, capped at 12 outside of my major. And then, obviously the students who were in that major were able to get into it as well. So there's space for everyone. It works out. Over the 4 years, you'll probably get to take all of the classes that you've wanted to take.
And I just want to add one little thing. Regarding classes between Columbia and Barnard, if you end up here, which I hope you do, your best bet, in my opinion, is to take half your classes at each school. That's the way I decided to do my Barnard career, because I think there are wonderful academic opportunities on both sides of the street. So even this semester, I'm literally taking half my classes at Barnard and half at Columbia.
Great. Anybody on this side have questions? Yes.
How was your transition from high school to college, and how did Barnard help you with that?
Great question. What was your transition like from high school to college, and how did Barnard help you make that work, because it's so far worked for all of you?
High school. My transition was
That happened.
On the rougher side, I would say. I loved my high school, and I love my home and my family, as I'm sure everyone does. But I wasn't someone who was so ready and so excited to get out of there. So I kind of expected a tougher transition, and I definitely got what I expected. But and then I was really lucky that I was here, because I just had, like, despite me, like, being, like, in my room, like, talking to my mom on the phone for, like, every, like, night the first, like, week, I still had friends. I, like, somehow magically still had friends, and they still, like, wanted to talk to me and make sure I was okay, and invite me to go to things. And, you know, I wasn't just that, like, weird girl in her room, like, talking to her mom. People still wanted to be my friend, and I don't know if that would have happened anywhere else. Obviously, I you know, it may be the case, but I think I was really lucky that I was here in Souls, in an all girls, all Barnard, all first year environment, when everyone kind of was having that, like, struggle. Maybe mine was a little extreme, but and, you know, it didn't last forever. It barely lasted at all. You know, classes started, I joined clubs, I made friends, and it was great. But yeah, there was a little rough patch, and I think that, you know, my community here really helped me through that.
To sort of echo that and then multiply it by, like, a lot, I probably spent the first month of college in tears, like, 85% of the time. And that is nothing to say about Barnard. It's absolutely me and the emotional roller coaster that I am. But I was one where I thought I was absolutely ready to come to college. As I said, I had done the pre-college program. I thought, oh yeah, I've got this. I know Barnard, I have a leg up. I've already been there, done that. And then I got here. And one, being very far away from home. I mean, not a lot of people were even further than me and adjusted much quicker, but I was just in shock. I think college was a lot harder than I anticipated it to be. I had come from being the top of my class, as I'm sure a lot of you are. And you're going to come to a place, I'm sure no matter where you go to school, where everyone was the top of their class. So where I used to, you know, sort of anchor in my intelligence, I was now kind of like, oh my gosh, everyone here is so much smarter and they've done all these crazy things, which is not true. I mean, we're all very intelligent. But I would do the same thing. I'd Skype my mom. I'd have lunch with my mom on Skype.
Guilty.
Yes, do it. If
All
you're
of the moms in the room just heaved, like, a collective sigh of relief. Like, your kids will still need you. They'll still call you.
If you do have a rough experience, call your parents. I mean, they're not going to expect that you're going to be, you know, on top of everything right away. And for me, it took a couple of months. And sort of getting adjusted to life here, spending a summer in New York versus then living in New York is very different if you're not from New York. It was completely shocking for me, and at first not for the better. Now for the better, but not then. And as I said, I'm involved in a Christian group, and no matter what group you get involved in, sort of finding that place where you feel like you fit, it's incredibly important. I have a family that runs my Christian group that I talk to and spend time with daily, and they live down on 110. And they're affiliated with Columbia, but they're not direct employees of Columbia, but just finding that family, that home base that you can go to and just say, hey, you know, I'm having a rough day. So I'm great now, but if you were to talk to me a year ago, probably wouldn't be so put together.
I want to add one quick thing. My best friend, when I was leaving for Israel for 6 months, she gave me a very funny bit of advice that I never forgot and that I want to share with you guys. Women, actually, you women. It is that, she said, after a while, Amanda, even a prisoner feels at home. and I said,
Give the follow-up to that.
Okay,
quickly,
so
please.
I'll give follow-up
Stand on
because that probably doesn't sound so good. And by the way, this wasn't for my transition into Barnard. As I said, this was my transition into Tel Aviv University. But the point was that I was so worried about going off to a new place in general And for all of you who will be going to a college next year, no matter who you are, no matter where you're going to adjust. That's it. It's only going to get great. So that's it.
I think I was most freaked out by the academic portion of it. Socially, I was really ready to come to college. I was done with high school, and I was so happy to be at Barnard finally. So when I got here, I was A-okay in terms of having people to talk to and go out. That worked really well for me. But I anticipated being sort of completely being knocked over by schoolwork. I wasn't, though, and that's because of all of the great academic resources we have here. So Dean Hollowell, the woman who spoke to you earlier, she's really modest, but she's amazing. So in addition to being the first-year class dean, she was also my advisor for my first 2 years until I declared as a sociology major. And the fact that before I graduated, I knew what classes I could take when I got to Barnard was amazing to me. I'm a micro planner, so I have to-do list by the week, by the day, and sometimes by morning, afternoon, night. I just need to do that to organize myself sometimes. And so the fact that Barnard is super organized and really values giving you the time to plan things and do things in advance really, really worked for me. And I'm pretty sure that's the only reason why I made it through my first year. So.
Great. Thank you. On that note, actually, I'm sorry I didn't give you any advanced warning, but our time escaped us, and I want you all to have lunch, so that's going to have been our last question. But thank you all, and thank you so much to our panelists. You did great.